75 Chevelle Laguna SS NASCAR Special. Laguna SS is a performance bright spot at Chevrolet this year as the Corvette loses its 454 engine and the Camaro Z28 is canceled. Its new L-82 400 V8 with the GM efficiency system employs old supercar tricks like cold air intake, hotter ignition, and a high-lift cam. The restyled Laguna had an auspicious debut as the winner of the 1975 Daytona 500. Former Detroit taxi driver turned 1973 Winston Cup champion Benny Parsons moved all the way from a 32nd starting position to the checkered flag, a new record. It was Parsons' third career win. He was a spoiler for Richard Petty, who was seeking his third straight Daytona win. The more aerodynamic 75 Laguna has rapidly gained favor in NASCAR. Most Chevrolet teams have replaced their Chevrolet Monte Carlos with it because long wheelbase cars with 427 engines now must use carburetor restrictors. Last year, NASCAR's Bill France saw the handling advantage enjoyed by the front mid-engine Monte Carlo and demanded its engine be pushed further forward, eliminating its edge for 75. The new shovel nose air intake for better cooling provides more aero downforce, yet a lower drag coefficient on Laguna. Laguna model starts at $4,108 or $440 more over the Malibu V8 Coupe and $147 over the Malibu Classic. It gets power brakes, quarter window louvers, dual sport mirrors, black bumper rub strips, round gauge instrument panel, extra sound deadening, and unique Laguna cloth upholstery. It also has 15 by 7-inch rally wheels, GR78 GM spec tires, radial tuned suspension with a rear sway bar, and greater steering caster angle like the Monte Carlo SS for positive tracking on the highway. The $4,405 Laguna Type S adds a half vinyl roof at $96 with a rear tulip panel color keyed to the roof. Sport instruments with tachometer, voltmeter, and clock cost $88. Sport suspension with firmer shocks, thicker anti-sway bars, and GR70 wide radial tires at $52, $87, or $100 depending on the sidewall. The $4,970 Laguna Type SS gets a 175 horsepower LT4 400 V8, color-keyed body side stripes, and bumper rub strips. It has goodies from the 74 Malibu SS, which it replaces, including a 4-spoke sport steering wheel at $15, swivel bucket seats for $148, and floor shift console for $68. The Laguna S and SS get a rear tulip panel color keyed to the vinyl roof coating. The 75 has larger flush-mounted taillights for an updated, cleaner appearance. The Laguna is still 207.3 inches long, but looks longer because of the new raked front end. It's no longer a series with a sedan and wagon. It's only a hardtop coupe in 3 trim levels and painted in red, bright blue, orange, black, white, or silver. The rear body color bumper and bright wheel lip moldings are gone. The long-stroke Mark I 400, which started life as a mild-mannered mill in the 70 Caprice, has been recast as Chevy's Hot One. The L-82 400 replaces the 74 235 horsepower LS4 454, but rates just 10 fewer horsepower. Hardware from the new 205 horsepower Corvette L-82 350 gives it impressive top end. Chevy developed the L-84 to replace the 454 Chevrolet Bel Air police car with a more fuel-efficient 400 Chevelle that can still reach 120 miles per hour. The L-82 and L-84 have an old-fashioned high-lift camshaft that's similar to the Duntov 325 horsepower Mark II 327 cam. Installed in the 71 330 horsepower LT1 350, it had a gross horsepower peak of 5,600 RPM, but in the L-84, the net peak is 4,800 RPM. It makes the same 290 foot-pounds of torque as the LT4, but at 3,600 RPM, the LT4's horsepower peak. Thanks to the 400's inherently cleaner burning 4.07-inch long stroke, it emits no more nitric oxide pollution than the 3.55-inch stroke L-82 350. Sharing the Corvette's single catalytic converter with dual exhaust design, the L-84 can pass emission standards that President Nixon recently froze at the 74 mark until 77. High-flow Mark I heads have 2.02-inch intake valves and 1.6-inch exhaust valves. Sharing the 3.96-inch bore with the L-82, the 400 has unique 8.9-to-1 compression ratio impact-extruded aluminum pistons and an aluminum manifold. A precision cast and balanced crankshaft with 2.75-inch main bearings and 4-bolt main bearing caps comes from the 454. Without the heavier Mark IV heads and iron manifold, the L-84 is 40 pounds lighter than the 454. By using the turbo-hydromatic 350 instead of the turbo 400 transmission, Chevy gets 10 extra horsepower at the rear wheels, essentially matching the 74 454 while burning 12% less fuel. Interior comfort and convenience. Our $6,368 test car had pricey options, including the L-84 engine, AM/FM stereo, and air conditioning. Two new lesser options were the remote control passenger mirror that we recommend highly, and the new intermittent wipers, which are a blessing in light rain. Our test Laguna SS was a public relations car that had graced print ads and car show turntables and was well broken in with nearly 9,000 miles on it. Like any showbiz diva, it had been meticulously cared for. There was not a scratch on the paint, nor a rattle or misplaced seam inside. The well-broken-in engine performed zestfully and flawlessly. Chevy has maintained a good reputation for build quality, but we'd be naive to portray our car as typical. Still, interior quiet, comfort, and convenience were stellar. The swiveling buckets are not as much to our liking as the reclining buckets used by Pontiac. However, the seat back angle is good and the side bolstering is far better than on the old Strato buckets of SS's past. They definitely make entry and exit easier. Taller testers thought the seat was too high, though shorter drivers loved it. There's as much legroom as in Ford's shortened 75 two-door Torino, which has a 2-inch longer wheelbase. Considering the high-revving 400, we were surprised it had air conditioning, but the L-84 employs a larger belt pulley which slows the speed of the compressor and places less of a drag on the engine when idling. The Laguna has extra rear quarter panel and parcel shelf insulation, as well as hood and firewall pads that complement the rock-solid colonnade hardtop body. In the Laguna, the deep burble of the dual exhausts is merely a pleasant reminder of the car's performance and not a tiresome cacophony. The new 100-mile-per-hour speedometer is also marked in kilometers. It was wildly insufficient since our car topped out at 127 miles per hour. GM's floor shifter connects to a Rube Goldberg-like linkage that moves a pointer in the speedometer instead of on the floor. It's a snazzy touch that shows up amateurish Mopar and Ford. Though interior room compares well to the Dodge Charger SE and Ford Torino, the trunk is about a cubic foot smaller. One thing we liked about the Laguna SS is that the spare tire includes the extra-cost rally wheel and big HR70 tire, allowing the spare to be included in the rotation pattern, extending the life of the $140 set of tires. Power and performance. Laguna can whip all but a handful of 1975 cars in a quarter-mile sprint. Within Chevrolet, only the L-82 Corvette and new V8 Monza offer a better ratio of pounds per horsepower. The L-84 is a high RPM-oriented engine with its Corvette heads and cam. With posit traction and the large HR70 radial tires, it did not burn the hides uselessly off the mark. This vice lives on in the 460 cube freewheeling Ford Torino, 454 Olds 442, and 455 Pontiac Ventura GTO, which we tested in our supercar comeback story in January. These big-inch supercars have an advantage of about 15% more torque over the Laguna. Laguna's 0 to 60 mile per hour acceleration lagged 2/3 of a second behind the 4-speed GTO, half a second behind the red and white Torino, and a quarter second behind the Olds 442. The Laguna's best 0 to 60 time of 7.9 seconds was achieved by holding first gear until the point of valve float at 5,500 RPM, which corresponds to 60 miles per hour. But as speeds increase, the engine comes on the cam. The quarter-mile ET came in under 16 seconds, which counts as a supercar in today's market. It was revving just under its horsepower peak of 4,800 RPM in second gear when we crossed the traps. The Laguna matched the 442 with a 15.7-second ET at 86 miles per hour. It was just 1/10 of a second behind the Torino and 4/10 behind the compact GTO, which was nearly 400 pounds lighter. In a half-mile drag, it would have left them all wheezing far behind. True to its origins as a police pursuit engine, the L-84 builds speed rapidly above 90 miles per hour, where the mega-inch V8s surrender to physics. The engine and moderate 308 axle ratio are perfectly matched to make maximum power when aero resistance is greatest. If it had either a lower or higher ratio axle, it would have been slower. We were able to test the car at GM's Milford Proving Ground on high-banked oval turns, which essentially steered the car through for you. On a mild February day, we topped out at 127 miles per hour and maintained a 120 miles per hour average for several laps. The high-caster steering gave us precise control and excellent tracking, even at nearly twice the 65 mile per hour speed limit. Handling and ride. The HR-70 tires have a massive contact patch compared to the supercars of 1965. This explains why the 4,100-pound Laguna could run circles around a 500-pound lighter 1965 Chevelle. But GM suspension engineers possess a rare ability to combine flat cornering and a smooth and unperturbed ride. Though your mother-in-law can tell she's not in her Mercury Monarch, she would never dream that this car could keep up with sports cars on a Gymkhana course. The last Dodge Charger rally we tried couldn't come near Laguna's lateral acceleration or transient response. Ford's freewheeling Torino has meaty HR-60 rear tires and lightweight aluminum wheels, which have improved lateral grip considerably, but it relies on stiff station wagon rear springs that give it a frontal rake and hard ride. On the highway, its steering is more subject to wander than the Laguna's. The only domestic cars that can outhandle the Laguna are GM's own GTO, Trans Am, and Corvette. The big tires also helped braking, assisted by new full-size 11-inch finned rear brake drums, which replaced the 9.5-inch drums on all GM intermediates. The proportioning valve seems to have been dialed in for these tires, as the drums would lock only in the last few feet of the stop. The bigger drums took some of the heat off of the front disc pads, keeping the discs cool and the smell of smoking brake pads at a minimum on our high-speed road course. Fuel economy. In our supercar revival test, we lauded Detroit for doing the best it could in the clean air era. However, the fuel economy of the low-compression Leviathan V8s is acutely deleterious to your wallet now that gas prices have risen 50% in 18 months. But the Laguna SS returned 14.5 miles per gallon on a long highway trip, 20% better than the 460 Torino. Even better, in city driving, it got only about 1 mile per gallon less than the Torino got on the highway. Again, the break-in miles don't make it quite a fair comparison, but 11 miles per gallon in city driving isn't bad in a car this quick. While the fuel economy can't compare to lighter-weight, high-compression mid-60s supercars, given the limitations of smog tuning and safety standards, we think a 13-mile-per-gallon average supercar is impressive. Summing up, since you can get this engine on a basic $3,600 Malibu, you could pay less for the same performance. You must opt for $55 power brakes, the $233 automatic transmission, and F40 suspension with 15 by 7-inch wheels and $52 GR70 tires. So the base Malibu with the L-84 could be had for as little as $4,350. We bet the only L-84s you'll see on dealer lots will be loaded Lagunas like our tester. And after mulling it over, we felt that those who still lust after a brand new supercar will want the flashiest SS. The grand touring appeal of the Laguna demands comfy buckets and luxury options. In the face of a restyle of FOMO intermediates and even a new small Chrysler Cordoba, we think the Laguna more than holds its own. It's on a short list of Detroit cars we'd actually consider buying.